Don't know whether you've noticed or not, but right now in Australia, drought aside, it's actually raining utes. And here's another one. This is from LDV. It's called the Terron 9. Don't know what happened to the Terron 8, but it's a stablemate for the LDV T60, except this car is quite a bit bigger. In fact, in size terms, it's somewhere between the LDV T60 and the HiLux and the Ranger and the full-sized American pickups at the other end. It's about the middle, which means you get a bit more interior space and a bit more tray space, which is kind of important in a ute. Now, this vehicle is LDV's first all-new ute in 10 years, would you believe? It's still a separate body on a ladder chassis, but in other mechanical terms, it's way newer than the T60. So let's pull it apart and see what makes it tick. The LDV Terron 9 isn't the cheapest of the Chinese dual cabs, but it does offer a few things that the majority don't. For a start, it's physically bigger with more room inside and in the tray, so that alone may be enough to sway some buyers. Beyond that, there are two trim levels, the entry-level Origin we've tested here and the Flasher Evolve, which won't be here for another few weeks. So that leaves us with the Origin, which costs $53,674 drive away or $49,990 for ABN holders as a launch special. Even though it's the entry-level version, the Origin scores 18-inch alloy wheels, a complete tow bar kit, LED headlights, 6-way power-adjustable front seats, full wireless connectivity, rain-sensing wipers, front and rear parking sensors, and a 360-degree camera system. The cloth trim and 4-speaker stereo signal that you're in the base version of the Terron 9, but the paddle shifters are a nice touch at this price point. For the full story, check out the written review at carsguide.com.au. Like most off-road dual cabs, the Terron 9 uses a ladder frame with a separate body on top, but the single-piece side panels mean there's no cab chassis option, reducing the model's appeal to some tradies who would have put a drop-side tray or a service body on the back. The other design highlight is the imposing presence of the thing. The sheer size of the grille and the long, tall tray make the Terron 9 a car you just can't ignore. Inside, the points of interest include the electronic door handles and the twin screens that dominate the dashboard. One of the really nice things about this vehicle being half a size bigger than most of its competition is that it is bigger inside, in the front and in the back. This is the base model, so you get the cloth seats, but they're actually not too bad, and they don't remind me of 1970s airline seats, so that's nice. You do get twin 12.3-inch displays, so the whole dashboard and media center is an animation. That's pretty much common these days. It's cheaper to make than the old analog ones is the real reason for it. A flat bottom steering wheel is nice with a leather rim, which is kind of cool. Lots of piano black, and it looks kind of classy. And there's little surprise and light things like a silhouette of the vehicle in chrome there on the dashboard. Plenty of USB ports, plenty of cup holders. This is an interesting addition, this pad here. I think it's got wireless phone charger written all over it, but it's not set up for that yet. But watch this space is the word. And interestingly too, instead of conventional mechanical door handles, this has got electric buttons. Now, for anyone who thinks, oh, well, I could get trapped in the car if the battery goes flat, there is a mechanical lever on a cable hidden down in the door pocket. So worst comes to worst and you're in a creek, you will still be able to get out. But that's very interesting. And then again, I think we're reaching a point in automotive history where doing things electronically like that is actually cheaper and lighter than a conventional mechanical lever. And that's why all cars now have electric windows. They're cheaper to make than wind-ups, believe it or not, and lighter. The rest of the interior is quite good in the fact that it's got a white roof liner, which I really like. It just opens the thing up. It feels much nicer. And thankfully, although there are still some menu-driven applications and systems, you've got buttons for the climate control. So thank goodness for that. And even at the price point that this vehicle is, it's got nice touches like paddle shifters, which you really don't expect in a ute, certainly not in the base model of a ute, and certainly not in a base model of a ute that costs around 50 grand. So well done to them for that. I guess now all we need to see is what it drives like. One of the big criticisms that a lot of people have of dual cab utes is that the tray's not big enough, and I get that. It is a compromised vehicle, so for some people it's not long enough or wide enough. In this case though, and that tailgate's actually sprung loaded with dampers. It's not motorised. So it's a clever way of doing it. It keeps the cost out of the vehicle, but it still makes the tailgate very light to lift up.
When you do open it, you see that it will take a pallet comfortably between the wheel arches, and there is a bit more load space in terms of its length. Nice high sides too with these cappings on it. What you don't get, unfortunately, is a 12-volt power socket anywhere in the tray, and I think that's a bit of an oversight. But it does have a spray-in liner, which is nice because water can't get under it, and 4 very good tie-downs. The other thing about this truck is that because of the way the body's constructed in a single side piece, there's no possibility of an aluminium drop side cab chassis version. It's the dual cab style side body or nothing, and that's just the way it is. But that's what most people are buying anyway. Under the bonnet of the Terron 9 is a 2.5 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder. Unlike the T60 LDV with its twin turbos, this is a single turbo unit, but it's a much newer design, so it should be more efficient. It makes 163 kilowatts of power and 520 Newton meters of torque, which puts it right at the top of the 4-cylinder turbo diesel ute market. It's actually pretty impressive. An 8-speed auto is the only choice of transmission, but of course it is all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, and it has a standard rear diff lock. The up-spec model coming in about 3 months from now will also have a front diff lock. The one thing I don't understand about this ute though is why the bonnet doesn't open further. I mean, I'm nearly banging my head on it to work on the engine, so I don't know what's going on there.
LDV's official fuel economy claim for the Terron 9 is 7.9 litres per 100 kilometres. Our test drive suggests closer to 9 litres per 100 kilometres will be the real figure, but that's still pretty good. There's an 80 litre fuel tank. That means you should be looking at around 850 kilometres between fill-ups. And since the vehicle is not Euro 6 compliant, there's no need for AdBlue to clean up the exhaust emissions, so that will save on running costs.
The first thing you're going to notice when you drive the LDV Terron 9 is that it is a whopper. It's a big vehicle. The bonnet is huge and it's flat, so it does block quite a bit of your forward vision right in front of the vehicle. Off-road, that can be an issue because it means you can't see what it is you're about to drive over or drive off. On the road, it's not such an issue, but it remains a big car and it never really shrinks around you. Even the passenger seat and the passenger's door seems an awful long way away. A lot of people like that. I don't mind it either because it means the cabin feels roomy, and that's part of the grand illusion of having lots of space. So that's a good thing. The twin screens are really nice. They're beautifully laid out. The graphics are good and clear, and I really do love the switches to control the climate control and a couple of other functions rather than having to mine through various menus. Interestingly though, the indicator stalk is on the wrong side, and that's because the stalk on the right hand side of the column is actually a gear shift. Now, I understand that clears up space in the center console where the gear shift would normally be, so it can be used for other things, and it is. There's cup holders and this pad here. But a lot of people are going to spend the first few days in this truck putting the thing into neutral or reverse by accident because they're going to confuse that with the indicator stalk. You will get used to it. I'm not sure it's a problem long term, but I also have my doubts about this park button. Instead of putting the lever into a park position, you press a button on the end. A lot of cars have gone to the separate park button. I understand it is the trend of the moment. I'm not a huge fan of it. You do get a reach and height adjustable steering column in this car, which is something you don't get in every dual cab unit, certainly not at this price point. The only thing I'd say is I would prefer the steering wheel came out a little bit further because I tend to sit a fair way back. But the seats are good. All the switchgear seems fine. The steering is actually really nice in this car. I like the way it's weighted, and I like the way the vehicle turns in. There's a good relationship between what you put in via the wheel and what you get out. Similarly, the suspension is quite nice too. The front end's quite supple, and although the rear end is a little bit lively because it's leaf sprung and it's designed to have up to a ton in it, the two ends are not totally mismatched like they can be in some dual cabs. So it drives more of a piece. And the ride, even though there is quite a bit of suspension travel, the ride is quite well controlled. So I'm in favour of that. What I don't like about this vehicle to drive are some of the driver aids. Look, LDV is far from alone in this. It's quite common for we motoring journos to complain about this sort of stuff in some of these vehicles, but honestly, the lane keeping assistance in this vehicle I find very crude, and I think it's oversensitive and it's overactive. I think it's a big statement, and I'll draw the line at making any definitive statement on this, but I think there's potential for this to scare some people into a crash if they're timid or inexperienced drivers. If you find yourself on a narrow, winding road and you're pushing on a little bit, the edge of the road, that if there's a sufficient definition, the cameras and the sensors will spot that, and this car will absolutely stab at the steering wheel to keep you from dropping a wheel off the verge. Now, if you've got a semi-trailer or a B-double or something coming the other way, trust me, you don't mind being as far over as possible, and yet this car will be quite insistent that no, it's not happy with you doing that. It gets a bit frustrating. It's not so bad on the freeway. It's not bad on the freeway at all. You don't notice it. But on the particular kind of country roads that Australia is, quite well endowed with, it can be an issue. And I think they really need to go back and have a look at some of the competition vehicles and how other car makers do it, and maybe have a bit of a recalibration. The other thing that's annoying is the driver distraction alert, which, to be honest, is its own distraction. The moment you take your eyes off the road long enough to read your fuel economy readout, for instance, or how many revs you're doing, or anything else on the dashboard, the driver assistance, the awareness alert takes over and starts beeping at you and blocks out the information that you were probably trying to see in the first place. So there's a bit of an own goal there. It could just be backed off a little bit. It's not a huge problem for a car to remind you to keep your eyes on the road or watch where you're going, but when it's so insistent and it's so eager to jump in and give you a kick up the backside for being inattentive, it really is, it's just annoying more than anything else.
We've talked about the driver aids at length elsewhere in this review, but it remains that LDV has seen fit to add things like autonomous emergency braking, forward collision warning, rear cross traffic alert, and blind spot monitoring. There are 7 airbags, including a set of front airbag, and it's great to see standard tyre pressure monitoring on a car like this. There's no crash safety rating yet, and we'll have to wait and see if one is published. The Terron 9 carries LDV's 7-year, 200,000 kilometre warranty, which is great news. Service intervals are every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, apart from the very first service, which is due at 10,000 kilometres, because LDV says 15,000 is too long for the running in oil the engine is filled with at the factory. We agree. There's no word yet on cap price servicing, but LDV says it's looking into it.
There's a temptation to think that at the end of the day, this is just another dual cab ute. And look, in a way it is, but it also reflects the fact that that's such a big market now in Australia for dual cabs that we're seeing some fragmentation. And this car is a classic example of that in terms of its size. It is plonked physically between the big sellers and the common selling utes and the full-sized American stuff. And that makes sense because there's a lot of people who either don't need or can't afford the F-150 or the Toyota Tundra or the Chevy Silverado, but they do need more space inside and more cargo area than something like the T60 from LDV provides. So I get it. There is a market for this sort of thing. Obviously this car too, its big selling point is the value for money, and at around the 50 grand mark, it's absolutely loaded, which wouldn't matter if it wasn't also a pretty good thing to drive, and it is. The motor's actually quite nice. The suspension seems pretty well sorted out. My only concern is that it might get lost as a bit of a Me Too car. In a sea of dual cab utes, I'm not sure it stands out, although it is quite physically striking when you see it. I won't say it's handsome, but it is striking. But for me, the big issues with this car are those driver assistance systems, which I reckon need more work. They need to go back and have a big think about how those systems interact in the day-to-day world, particularly in terms of Australian conditions. And if they can do that, then they'll have moved Chinese-made utes on, because a lot of them do have that issue. At the moment, though, I think value for money, this car is a bit of a standout, and who knows, you might just find that this size vehicle becomes the new default. Cars over the years, over the generations, have got bigger, and maybe this is exactly where dual cab utes are going.